All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And greetings all. It is such a pleasure to be with you. Those who are watching live, it's only a small percentage, but great to have you all here. And we are a couple of minutes behind, as usual.
I blame you.
I don't think it. Maybe it is my fault. I don't know. I am happy that Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
Tony is here.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, Tony is a very big deal when it comes to the technical side of things. I don't know who's on Twitter, but if you're on Twitter, X, whatever, I know, that vile, awful platform now run by a vile, awful guy. If you could tweet that we're on the air, though, that would be great. And then I will retweet you. Much to do today. Pulitzer Prize winner in the top of the second hour, Michael Hiltzik, to talk about the normalization of Donald Trump by the press. And it really feeds into a bunch of stories that ramp up to the debate, one of which is essentially the way in which the press has an interest in a horse race, right? The closer things are, the more clicks, the more interest there is. So I think it all feeds sort of into that vat of commercialism, you know. But also on the show today, of course, Courtney with a True Crime Corner. And today's True Crime has, at least in part, a Hollywood ending, which I like. You know, I'm not good with the true crime. Bad stuff happens, and then, you know, it's very difficult on me. I'm a very frail. Well, I just am noticing, this over here, that's weird. I think this has to be like that. That's why that does that. I like something where there's a little light at the end of the dark tunnel of true crime. So this story that she's featuring today is such a thing. You can see, yes, my hair is freshly darkened and cut for today's new week.
It does look good.
I had planned, well, thank you. I'm hoping that that's a reflection of a real, you're not just saying that. You know?
That's not fake. That's real.
Okay, well, now I feel better about it.
It looks nice.
No, thank you. I'm wearing my credibility glasses. The hair is just coiffed, darkened, and cut. I had planned on not being here today. It's a small point, but I was going to be away this week. The reason that I am here is because it's not a transmitter. What is that called, Tony? Transformer.
Yeah.
Blew up in the heat. It's very, very hot here.
Too many air conditionings running and poo.
And yeah, well, and apparently to make it worse, and this is kind of the thing that made it really wild, because these transformers are blowing and giving all over the place. But what really made it wild was this is an underground thing, and water was pouring into the what is it again? It's transmitter, not transmitter. Transformer. Thank you. The transformer. Mm-hmm. And the mixture caused an explosion of toxic materials because it's acid, okay? I guess that builds up in there or some kind of chemical reaction.
Big battery.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big battery, so that explains it. And so they couldn't fix it. Okay, so it's 107 degrees. It might have even been higher than that. But
it's 110 out here,
So and no air conditioning, no anything. I mean, through the day, into the night. And we didn't want to leave the house in that kind of state, you know, to the pet sitters and the house sitters. So we just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So we decided to push our trip by a week. So back to the transformer, they had to bring a hazmat team in to drain the water out, make it safe enough, secure that area to then put a new transformer in. So that took time, and that's the reason I'm here today. Thank you, everyone. We'll have time for closing statements shortly. But that is my story, and it's moderately interesting. I'm not saying it was a great story, but it explains why I'm here. So Michael Hiltzik today, also Gary Dietrich, the great political analyst, bottom of the hour. This first hour, we'll have some politics for you. In fact, there's quite a bit. A lot of people are writing me and emailing me about the
Mark Thompson Show.
A lot of people are writing and emailing me about this Alan Lichtman, the Professor Alan Lichtman and his keys to his predictions. He's the Nostradamus of elections. He's never missed. And so his latest is, and I just feel he's everywhere. Don't get me wrong, I suppose I book him. We just end up sort of crowded in terms of bookings. We're certainly not too big to, book Alan Lichtman. I'd love to have him on some level. But to really give him his time, to let him breathe, I think we'd be a little bit challenged in the squeeze. But more to the point, there he is. He's everywhere. So I don't feel like I'm really adding anything by having Alan Lichtman on. You can bounce around and see him and his 13 keys. And he, I think, makes a compelling argument if you buy into the 13 keys for whatever conclusion he's coming to. So I think he, like a good professor, logically lays out his case. Lichtman is everywhere because he's giving people some of the hope that they so desperately need and so desperate for, says Eric. I agree with that. He is a bit of hopium, Now, he predicts, and again, he is someone who touts the fact that he's never been wrong. He touts this time that Kamala Harris will be the winner. He goes through his keys and he explains it. So that's where we end up. And if there's enough interest, I'd be happy to continue to book him. Let's watch the debate. Let's see how that really lands. But just to answer many of you who said book him, we will, if there is enough interest. 40 years of accuracy is hard to argue. He's awesome. Right. Well, he's not missed since 1984. Other folks on Bulwark do not buy into it, or Rick Wilson. I hope Americans save our democracy, says Audrey. Yeah. He is someone who makes a cogent argument for why these keys are important. Okay. They're the 13 keys. Anyway, and you reach a certain threshold with the 13 and you're in, and that's where Kamala Harris is. Now, the debate is talked about in a really important way, and we're going to talk to Gary Dietrich about that because I think you can argue both sides of that the debate is really important and that the debate maybe really isn't so important. We seem to have sort of baked our election cake. You can't move the Trumpies off of Trump, and you can't move the never-Trumpers off of the never. You're dealing with a very small sliver of people who show up in the CNN election post, whatever, focus groups, and I'm always astounded that those people still haven't made up their mind. But again, it may come down to that wiggle room. The latest polling is grim for Harris, but there are even two sides to that. The New York Times Siena polling puts Trump ahead, and puts Trump ahead in a way that would suggest he's reached a kind of critical mass. And you're hearing a little echo. I don't know what that is. Maybe that's from Kim's headphones again. We have that issue with it. I don't know. We work with that. But anyway, the competing poll, first, there are 2 points on the New York Times Siena poll. The methodology on New York Times Siena poll is solid. I mean, it seems solid. But I've read increasingly that it leans toward Trump. It becomes a Trump-favored poll, and then you can see the ways in which the New York Times favors Trump. They would like a horse race at very worst, because Trump is good for business. Trump is good for clicks. Trump is good for the commercial aspects, which are very much a part of the reality of the news business. So as you look at the ways in which Trump is even normalized by the New York Times, his crazy utterances and his riffs that go on for half hour, 45 minutes that are nonsensical, are then culled for certain statements he makes that masquerade as policy, and then the New York Times will play it as a policy point. These are things that, in my judgment, reflect a bias on the part of the New York Times. Now, you can say to me, well, of course, Mark, you're an anti-Trumper, so that's the way you see the world. Yeah, but just because I'm an anti-Trumper doesn't mean the world isn't really that way. And so I see all the commercial reasons and business reasons associated with playing up the normalcy of Trump, the sane washing of Trump, right? Making him seem saner than he actually is. And I think that's a big part of what's going on right now. It's a critical way in which the media is helping to create the horse race. Stan Pollock CPA, who is just now jumping in for a $10 super chat. He is my favorite CPA. He is Stan Pollock CPA.
Big shout out.
Shout out. I'm embarrassed to say, while waiting for Mark, I listened to the Dan Bongino show.
What?
I don't know who that is. Must be some conservative thing.
Yeah, he's a right-wing dude.
Okay.
I've never really listened to him much, but I know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to find moderate talk shows these days. It's true. Well, I mean, of course, talk radio is dominated by right-wing. There's just no moderate talk at all. But I love that you took a moment to tell us about it, Stan, and to throw us 10 spots.
Big shout out.
Yeah, 10 spot is good. No Contendo says, Tyreek Hill. You need to encourage people, especially Florida, to vote. Yeah, how about the Tyreek Hill incident? He's the star receiver for Miami. And what was it, hours before the game started, he's pulled over by Miami cops. Again, these stories are, varied. I think that we're kind of getting the real story. One of the cops has already been put on administrative leave. It was a reckless driving charge, I think they got him on, right, Kim? And he
I know it was some type of traffic incident that he made. Like
right.
it was just really close to the stadium, so close that there were other players that saw what was happening and came to his aid. They're like, no.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to say it.
Do you know who I am?
Exactly.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Exactly. Do you know who I am is right.
Yeah.
Then he went on, Tyreek Hill did. Thank you for No Contendo for mentioning this. He went on to have an insanely great game. Okay, so he... who was the golfer who was... Remember the golfer who was shaken down by the cops, and that also turned into an incident? It was a white guy, so it's not always black-white. It's a power thing oftentimes. And
I think after Hill made a touchdown, he put his hands behind his back like in a handcuff motion.
Yeah, it was pretty great. It was pretty great. Don't mean to make light of it, though, because it's a real problem, and that's a real group of guys there, at least in that incident, who were...
Scary.
Yeah, exactly. And had he not been Tyreek Hill, what would have happened?
Right.
So, alleged domestic dispute in January, vows to clean up off-field behavior. So he may be a troubled figure, but I mean that doesn't change the arithmetic on his stop. Hey, I wanted to quickly do something that we do from time to time on the show that is quite important, and it's very... I know people join us from other places, which I really love, and I love learning about where you are and how you take the show in. There's some things unique, sadly, to California, a place I love, and I wanted to just quickly mention what we're going through right now, and it's not...
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's not just heat in California. There are fires burning, and I want to acknowledge the great men and women who fight these fires. Southern California has record heat, as you know. 36,000 structures are threatened by wildfires. There are acres and acres, I mean thousands of acres in mountain communities of San Bernardino County, near Lake Arrowhead, in the Angeles National Forest of north of Glendora. These are very tough times in Southern California. 3% containment this morning, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. This is the line fire in San Bernardino County. It's 21,000 acres. They're mandatory evacuations that we went through over the weekend in the mountain communities.
Look at that. Wow.
It's brutal. And these are, beautiful areas. Think Northerners, Northern Californians, think Lake Tahoe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's another one up there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the state is crippled by this. And the heat across the region has made it even more difficult for these firefighters. They face temperatures in the mid-90s to triple digits, and their relative humidities that are low, around 20%. So I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the heroic work that is being done by firefighters through extreme heat, bone-dry conditions, and we're very concerned that, nature has even tougher times ahead. We lost our house to fire, as you know, our entire neighborhood affected by flames that engulfed homes. And so I have a special place in my heart and, frankly, PTSD in my head about so much of what's going on in California. And we haven't even really gotten into the teeth of fire season yet. So, but I just wanted to take a second and acknowledge the heroic work being done by those people, the firefighters, both in the air and on the ground. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm in Glendora. The air quality here is terrible right now. The air quality, says Luis. Thank you, Luis. And I will tell you that, thank you for interacting with the show. I will also tell you that the air quality all over Southern California is fairly poor. By the way, that's not unusual with an extended heat wave situation. Generally, that lid of high pressure that kind of settles in over a region produces poor air quality. But you add to that the fires and the smoke, and we know and have discussed in great detail the health effects of that smoke. It's not good. So there's that. Maud Day. I see Maud Day. My favorite part of every day is the Maud part of every day. Yeah, big shout out to Maud. She is one of our regular listener viewers. A $25 super chat. Wow, loving that. Thanks for having Gary Dietrich on, she says.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Indeed, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to, I don't know where to start. I'm going to push a little bit of the politics, if you wouldn't mind, to Gary, who's joining in just a moment. All right. I'm reluctant to do this, but I would like to touch on the debate and something that I said and have been saying that now everybody's saying. But when I said it, I was damned by my own audience.
Uh-oh.
And I'll tell you what I said. I was even taken on by Kim.
Oh.
And I have to say this, though, just in general, because I get email about Kim and me and the back and forth between us. And I love that Kim is a bit of a contrarian. So if I say something, Kim will kind of try sometimes to find a way to argue with me. And I don't mind that. I kind of like it. I grew up in a house with an insanely smart sister. My sister's so much smarter than I am. So my sister graduated top of her class, all right? Then she went to Columbia and graduated top of her class there to get her master's degree, okay? Then she went to Stanford Law School, and she graduated top of her class there, and she's got a law degree from Stanford. That's how smart my sister is. So my sister, I grew up with her, and she and I would argue all the time. First of all, I was jealous. I was competing with my sister's sibling rivalry, and she's way smarter than I am, and I, on some level, know that. So I would always take the opposite position from my sister. And we grew up in a political family because we were Washington, D.C., and so we kind of have that milieu, Anyway, the point is that I love that Kim is a bit of a contrarian that way. It does lead to some usually interesting conversations, and I can make some points that I couldn't make otherwise. And hey, man, sometimes it's annoying to have somebody disagree with you, but sometimes it's great to have somebody disagree with you, and I adore Kim. So that's where I am on Kim. The email I get is sort of, I got one email about how can you, you talk to Kim like she's, I don't want to misstate it, but it was sort of like playing on the fact that I'm a man, you're a woman, Kim. You know what I mean? So that when I when you disagree with me, and then I try to defend my argument, and I try to do it, passionately, emotionally, in an interesting way, have some kind of dynamic that's not just kind of flatlining.
Right.
And people say, how, you're, are you putting her down? Are you mansplaining? Are you, it's like, hey, listen, Kim and I are of different sexes. She's a woman, I'm a dude, but that shouldn't prevent me from arguing my position with her.
Absolutely.
And it shouldn't prevent, and so it's just a bad bust. You know what I mean? If every time I argue with Kim, you guys are going to send me an email about I'm mansplaining, well then I'm not going to have a show. Then I'll just do a show on my own or get a guy in, because it's what liberals do. We all have purity tests. Every situation has to survive the purity test that us libs do. And I really felt at that moment, as I got this particular email, really incensed me. I felt offended by it. How can you, because I love Kim, and I don't put Kim down in any kind of sexist way. And I'm offended that anyone would even suggest that.
Right.
So, that's where I am on this. And this
that's fun. So are you going to get a dude in instead of me because people are complaining?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Tony, you're up, and
You're
Kim,
up.
You're going to be back.
I'm out.
Yeah. No.
I should get a Trump hat. Let's go all in on this.
That's right. Really, we should really go after it. No, nothing's changing. But the thing that really provoked it was the conversation that Kim and I had, and Kim. I come from a position of anxiety. I also come from a position of worry, and I'm concerned in this election cycle about things like the debate and about this rah-rah Kamala thing. And I'm not rah-rah Kamala from the standpoint of there's nothing to worry about. Again, I come from the standpoint of I don't care how good your team is going into the big game. Let's look at where the team might have some leaks in our offense or defense or whatever it might be. And so I was saying, and this is what provoked the emails, I was saying, Kamala, there is a sense, and I'm hearing it, that she's going to wipe the floor with Donald Trump. And I was saying, don't underestimate Donald Trump on the debate stage.
Right,
and
which
that
makes perfect sense.
And it led to a back and forth between Kim and myself. And I said, don't trivialize Donald Trump's abilities to take a moment on stage and, in his way, blast out that fire hose of inaccuracies, of lies, and in some way have it land with a public that is sort of only marginally read in on a lot of these issues. And now you're hearing the warnings from others. A lot of people are saying don't underestimate Donald Trump on that stage. So I feel as though I was maybe not first to the party, but early to the party. It comes from my worry. But you're hearing now Governor Josh Shapiro. Now, he's the governor of Pennsylvania. He was on the short list for Kamala Harris to actually run with her, right? And he says she has a, quote, tough debate ahead. He says, quote, listen, he could be me speaking like this, and then he could deal with the emails that I deal with. Listen, he says, as much as we want to criticize Donald Trump, he's a liar, he's all these things, people know Donald Trump. He's a skilled debater. He's a guy who is willing to say anything at any time just to get through a question. And he's a showman. He's been on TV before. So don't underestimate Donald Trump, he says. He says, now, I've known Kamala Harris 20 years. She is tough as nails. She's a prosecutor. She'll be prepared. But this is going to be a tough debate. And that's all I have been saying, that she has everything she needs to win this debate. Even though it's not really a debate, it's a TV show. She has everything she needs to win this TV show, this back and forth. But because there are no real rules and there's no score, and you're just going to hear a lot of punditry at the end, and you're going to hear a lot of spin, and among those who in the spin room who'll be working for Trump, spinning for Trump, did you see, is RFK Jr.? He is going to be in the post-debate chamber to meet with media and to spin for Trump.
What?
Yeah. So anyway, that's what you're going to be down to. So it's going to be a feeling you'll have about things. And so I guess all I'm saying is, and this is the sad part of the sexism of it all, I think, she has a tougher dragon to slay because she's a woman. She can't come out bitchy or too aggressive.
Yeah.
Women are held to, and we do, and this is something else. I was making the point the other day during this conversation. They got the email. I was making this very same point. Women are held to a standard that men just aren't held to. It's awful in every part of our society, in the workplace, on the debate stage, in the back and forth, in the C-suites. We hold women to a much higher standard, and so we evaluate them in different ways that are unfair. But in that spirit, I just wanted to note that she has challenges. That doesn't mean she can't prevail. She's insanely smart. But he's, what is it? Clever like a fox type thing. I mean, he's able to bob and weave. He's got the weave, as you know. Don't take my word for it. We will get to Gary in a moment. Uncle Scrooge with a $5 super chat. And what is it? Let me see it.
Big shout out.
Yo, Mark. When will the mainstream media talk about Trump's threats over the weekend? Mass deportations, being bloody, threats to jailing the media. Typical. Yeah, he had a busy weekend with threats. That, I think, reflects his paranoia. I mean, paranoia might just maybe worry his own anxieties about things. When you start threatening, and this is what he did, he said, essentially, anybody and all of you who are up against me, particularly those in the media, you will face prison time when I win. And he did say, when I win.
We had a back and forth about this. I thought, I don't really want to write when I win. What can I change it to if I win? And you said no. He said when I win. That's what we write.
Well, what's so funny is Kim is always insistent because of her journalism background on being absolutely accurate. But on this one, she was changing it.
I know.
And I said, no. The man said, when I win. There it is.
Yeah. It was unpalatable to me.
Is that a piece? Did I send you something on this, Tony? I want to get to Gary.
Yeah.
So maybe let me welcome Gary in, then we'll run it, and then I will get Gary's reaction, and Gary will help calibrate concerns about the debate, etc. Smash the like button if you would.
With your iron rod.
Here on YouTube, the likes help us in the algorithms, so I appreciate that. And subscribe if you haven't. It's great to have you here. Really do appreciate our live show every day, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 o'clock Eastern Time. It's 11 to 1 on the magnificent West Coast. And really do appreciate everyone being along. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
The longtime political analyst at KGO Radio, and he is now the political analyst at the CBS television stations, also at iHeart Radio. Across the iHeart empire, you can hear him offering political takes. We love having him here on Mondays. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Gary,
hey, Mark.
Help guide us through the dark wilderness. I know there's a lot of pre-debate dance going on.
Oh yeah,
Tony, do you want to? Should we play this? What do you have, Tony? I wanted Gary to react to it, but maybe it's.
I think it was from CNN. You sent me it.
Now I don't remember what it was. Let's. This is about his Trump threats. Let's put this on a back burner for a second. First, I want to get Gary's takes on what to watch for, what's important, the latest polls. Give me a state of the state, please.
Yeah, well, let's start with polls first, shall we, Mark? Kind of state of the polling, and then we'll jump into the debate because I know that's where you want to spend the bulk of the time, probably. So the big news today is yesterday's release of the latest New York Times Siena College poll. This one is really a big deal in terms of recent polling because really what it does, Mark, and I might help make a distinction here. Pollsters themselves and pundits typically have started using the phrase quality poll versus sort of all the others. And a quality poll is simply, what they mean by that is the amount of resources put in to making a poll as accurate as possible. It has to do with sample size. It has to do with the number of adjustments that are made to the various demographics that are part of it. It has to do with a whole host of things but you could call it more generically in colloquial terms, one of the big ones, right? One of the big polls that's put out there, the top 4 or 5 that most people are paying attention to. And this is getting a lot of attention. We can't have time to dig down into all the nuances, but it has Trump up by a point nationally. That means obviously nothing in terms of the outcome of the Electoral College. I always remind people of that. Come on, it's going to be those 7 or 8 battleground swing states. Those are the ones we're watching. The rest of the Electoral College is pretty well divvied up. Those individual states are going to decide things. But if you dig down a little bit, Mark, there are some interesting things. For example, I'll just give you one that a lot of people are talking about. If you ask people, do you want change in this election? 62% apparently say yes, that is a really important thing to me. Okay, well, who in your mind of the 2 main candidates is the candidate of change? Now, this may or may not surprise some people because she is the sitting vice president, but Kamala Harris gets about a quarter of the support. Yeah, about 25%. Yeah, she's the candidate of change. But double that, almost half say, no, Trump is the candidate of change. So those are the kinds of things that pollsters are looking at in terms of trend lines, Mark. And also, I'll just say this. If you look at the top line and bottom line of this poll, Kamala Harris has had whatever bounce she's going to get, right? As the new candidate, as the new kid on the block, quote unquote, at least to this race, her convention bounce, whatever that was going to be or not going to be, whatever bounce she was going to get after replacing Joe Biden, that is now baked into this poll. And that's why people are taking it very seriously, because it essentially shows that neck and neck race we had starting this year.
I'm seeing in the chat people saying that the polls don't account for Roe, for example, the incredible rage. Here it is. Here's one comment. Mountain bike fans, I don't think any of these damn polls are accounting for Roe rage. But I would think that they would account for that. I mean, it's a poll, and the Roe rage is built into the poll.
Right, and the Roe rage, that's not new, right? It's been around for a while. I mean, this has gone on for the last couple years, really. So, no, that is taken into account. And of course, as part of the polling, you could dig down and see what issues are most important to you. And Roe, the whole abortion issue is going to be part of that. But again, only part of it. And so, we know the other big issues that are sitting out there. They're immigration. They're the economy. They're inflation. They are, for some people, as you well know, Mark, the Middle East, Israel, Gaza. So there are a host of issues. Yes, the Roe rage, as people are calling it, or the concerns over abortion, are clearly part of this and other major polls.
So speak to this for a second. Female voter registration is way, way up, says Armando. A, is that true? B, can you calibrate its effect?
Well, certainly the women vote, as people like to say it generically, and I think that really does a disservice to women, frankly, because women are all over the map just like every other demographic is. I think it's really unfortunate that we try to block out, well, Latinos are going to vote this way, blacks are going to vote this way, women are going to vote this way, because if you look at the numbers, that simply is not borne out. I mean, there will be trends, and we can talk about that in terms of the women's vote now. But I think it's really important that we not label people with a monolithic block, that they are all going to trend this way. Now, having said that, we know that right now, Kamala Harris is polling, depending on your poll look at, but she typically has double-digit support above Trump among women. And for Trump, he has greater support among men than women. But interestingly, in this Siena College Times poll, Mark, she is doing better among women than he is doing among men, if that makes sense. His margin of men is smaller than her margin of women. So people are seeing that as, okay, this is a good sign for her, but they're saying she's still got to bump that up, that she isn't where some candidates have been in the past in terms of running as a Democrat. So, she's made inroads. But, again, how much more margin is there in that demographic, knowing that women already know where she stands on abortion? They know where Trump stands on abortion. They know where he is in terms of women's issues. So, there's question marks being raised about how much margin there is left, for example, in that demographic of women for Kamala Harris.
That's a fascinating stat, that her share of women and his share of men. That's a really interesting stat. And you can lose yourself in this maelstrom of all of this stuff on polling, but this is another one I just wanted your take on. Armando asks or states, women and minorities decide this election. Again, is that right?
Well, not totally. And Democrats are quite well aware of this, which is why they picked Tim Walz. They know that those demographics are important. And in fact, they know it's very important because, what's not been talked about as much, except amongst pundits and pollsters, is the fact that Donald Trump is doing much better amongst Latino voters, Hispanic voters, than Republicans typically have in the past. And Democrats are concerned about that. He's doing better amongst young black males than Republicans have in the past. But the male vote can't be discounted, particularly the union vote. And that's why you're seeing so much time spent in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and Michigan, particularly where they're putting Tim Walz out there. And of course, the Trump campaign is trying to counter that with J.D. Vance and others, because they know that working class male vote, some people are hearkening way back, Mark, to 1980, the so-called, Reagan Democrats, is when this was first came to the fore, that union men were not going to just lockstep with the Democratic Party. And of course, we're waiting for this other shoe to drop, with remember the Teamsters union president at the RNC. And he has said, we have not yet made a decision on if or whether we are going to endorse. That's a new thing in union world. And so, men who are particularly working class men are still, in some people's minds, up for grabs.
Yeah, the union thing is astounding to me, because you have one candidate, you have one party. During the strike, the auto strike, when Biden is actually walking the picket line with unionized auto workers, and then Trump set up a photo op with those these are non-union workers. He gave them signs. It's such a classic Trump move, but still somehow union workers can be on the fence about it. And again, you can be on the fence for a lot of reasons, but if you're voting for the party that's more about unions, come on, man. Trump and Musk sat down. Trump celebrated Musk's firing of 7,000 Tesla workers who wanted to unionize. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah,
Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you. I do think you hit on something, though, that's very important. And that is that these various demographic blocks or entities are not single issue. In other words, yes, union workers care about union issues, but the research is showing they care about other things as well. They care about inflation. They care about the economy more broadly. They care about immigration. And so a lot of these other issues are animating union and workers, not just their candidate stance on union specific issues per se.
I would say one thing before I ask you about this next thing. A lot of this has to do with how motivated people are to vote. Getting the vote out is always so critical. So a lot of the things we talk about, it's not so much about decision making. It's about decision making related to getting out and voting. That's where this happens. And so in that spirit, I ask these other questions. And the first is about the much celebrated and talked about endorsement that the Cheneys have given Kamala Harris. So it starts with Liz Cheney, and she is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, and she does a whole thing about how conservative she is. But the threat that Donald Trump, and I'm not, when I say it like that, I'm not trivializing it. I mean, I suspect that Liz Cheney and I would have a long, fractious conversation in a car ride, together. I don't think we'd agree on much. And her dad, I don't even know that I'd let him in the car with us to where. But both of them have come out for Kamala Harris. Now, to the point. How much of an effect does this have on other GOP voters? Is it any kind of bellwether for what might actually happen, and what effect does it have?
Yeah, Mark, this Cheney thing is very interesting to me, because Democrats crowing about Dick Cheney is about as likely as Luke Skywalker crowing about Darth Vader. You know what I mean? It's Remember that Dick Cheney was actually, now we call it memed, right? as Darth Vader. I mean, the dark side. I mean, of the Bush presidency, Democrats hated Dick Cheney. I mean, they detested him. They deplored him. So it is quite interesting now, right, that he's being trotted out as like, wow. Now, what effect is this going to have? I think we have to put this in perspective. There's a huge chunk of voters who don't even know who Dick Cheney is. I mean, that's the fact. I mean, like that or not. Yeah. I mean, there's just, especially younger voters, right?
Sure.
Think about how long ago that was. That was multiple vice presidents ago. And I'll guarantee you, most young voters go about as far back as Barack Obama, and that's where it stops. So is Dick Cheney going to sway a lot of people? No. Here's why. Because the people that already felt like Liz and Dick Cheney have been never Trumpers from the get-go, right? I mean, they are baked into those numbers. On the very, very margins, might it sway a few people? Maybe. But I'm just telling you, Mark, we are not going to see a major swing in the polls because of Dick Cheney coming out saying he's going to support Kamala Harris. I just think that's the reality of it politically. And that's why you're not, it's a 24, 48-hour news story, but you're not seeing people curl, but you're not going to see any ads with Dick Cheney, saying you need to vote for Kamala Harris.
No, he's a radioactive figure as I see it. And I totally agree. I'm glad to hear you say this because you have a real considered opinion on these things. But I saw it. I thought, this is somewhere between I don't care and I can argue you can play it as a negative. And here's how you play it as a negative. And then I will get to the debate. You play it as a negative by saying, if you're Trump, of course Dick Cheney endorses Kamala Harris. He's a forever war guy. He got us into the Iraqi war, and we would have still been there if he was still in power. I'm not a Cheney fan. I think Dick Cheney is what's wrong with the country in terms of the military involvement that we had in other theaters of war like Iraq, right? You can spin it that way.
Oh, you have to believe, Mark, that there's particularly some people on the progressive end of the Democratic Party who are saying, well, if he's supporting her, there's got to be something wrong with her. I told you she's like a war horse and, sheep's clothing. I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think they have to be very careful how they spin this because there's going to be certain people who do not have fond memories of Dick Cheney and would never support anybody that he says he supports.
Yeah, I was totally in the ixnay on the ain't che. I was really like, keep it quiet, guys. That's not something you want to advertise. All right, now I want to get to the debate, which is really a TV show. It's this weird thing, but it is, I think it's important. Will you tell me how important it is this time around relative to normally and how we should evaluate this debate tomorrow night?
Well, we had on June 27th of 2024 a forever change moment in modern politics because the drift for decades has been, oh, debates don't matter. Come on, they never really move the polls. And if they do, it's very temporary, yada, yada, yada. And people would point out certain moments. I mean, those are old enough, can go way back to Mike Dukakis when he had that really horrible answer about somebody coming in his window and assaulting or killing his wife. And what would you do? And, oh, man, that was a disaster. And he actually told me that personally one time when I was at the Kennedy School afterwards talking with him. So there's moments, but debates have been seen as inconsequential, relatively speaking, Mark. But this year has changed that perception dramatically, right? We saw one of the major two candidates in a historically unprecedented way lose the campaign on one night in a debate. And we know what happened since then. Now, as far as this debate goes, by all accounts, we are not hearing a lot of any kind of commitment. We've heard some noises. Maybe there'll be a debate number two. I'm guessing that both camps are waiting to see how tonight goes. All right. But there's been talk about an October debate. Nobody is committed to that. Certainly the Harris camp hasn't. What does that mean? That means that tonight's importance has grown significantly, particularly for Harris. Why? Because her debate performances are very limited. You have to go back to 2019, right? And to say 2020 to say, hey, okay, here's when she's actually done a debate that people think is consequential, right? That they can get something from. And of course, as we've sort of laughed about before, Mark, her most famous debate moment was taking on her current president over racism, right? That was her moment when actually that bumped her up in the polls in the primary amongst Democrats. All right. But so she has, in most people's minds, something to prove because she's done the one major interview, as you know. She has, in people's minds, something to prove. So I think Harris in particular tonight is going to be scrutinized carefully. The Donald, as people still like to call him, he's done a bunch of these. People will expect him to be a certain way, expect him to have foibles. So I think the stakes are high for both, but particularly high tonight for Kamala Harris. Or excuse me, tomorrow night for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, he chews up the scenery pretty much in whatever he's doing. And you just see him on the stump and he goes off and he's not in any way bound to fact, or he's all about the vibe and the feel and the strength that he brings to things. And so that's a weird place in which you have to debate this guy and knock down the falsehoods that you feel are worth knocking down. You have limited time and all of that. And now to the superficial. One of the things that Trump insisted on, as you're aware, is that Kamala Harris, and this is argued so vigorously by her people, but they couldn't get the concession, that Kamala Harris not be permitted to stand on any kind of riser that would have given Trump and Harris sort of an equal look from a camera standpoint. Now, he's a tall dude, a big dude, and she is an average-sized person, okay? And so you end up visually with, once again, I thought that when I say once again, I'm talking about the CNN interview, which kind of made her look so tiny. I think you end up once again visually, when you see that two-shot, with someone who's big and someone who's little. Speak to like superficial crap and how important it is.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, debate coaches worldwide are going to be, parsing this thing out silently with their classes, right? I mean, there is a component to that is important. In fact, we know this so deeply that it goes back to the very first televised debate, Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, when the polling and all the debate, coaches. I mean, this has been parsed for decades now. That those who listened to the debate on radio thought that Richard Nixon won. Those who watched it on television thought that John F. Kennedy won. So anybody that thinks that visuals don't matter in communication, that's every Comms 101 class, makes this point very clear. Visuals matter. They matter a lot. And so that's very important, Yeah, here's one of the famous ones of Nixon wiping his brow and, looking like he was all hot and bothered and sweating. And, Kennedy looking, even the color of his suit, people said, man, that was a bad choice. That bland gray suit with that background. So this is going to be something that Kamala Harris is going to have to deal with. Mike Dukakis dealt with it. Hillary Clinton dealt with it. Both of them were much shorter than their opponents. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Dukakis did use a riser, did use a box. But will it carry the day? No. But will it have some at least nuanced effect on people's perceptions, at least unconsciously? Probably.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's nuanced. And then this is from OCB. There's more than one camera, Mark. Geez. No kidding. Thank you, OCB, for explaining it to me. I don't know much about TV, but what I would say is that I specifically said on that shot in which it's a two-shot where you see both of them, one will look bigger than the other. Jeez, OCB, give me. I'm telling you, Gary, my crowd, my audience roughs me up.
Hey, Mark, I got to tell you, man. Of all people to be critiquing Mark Thompson about television and shots is an absolute crack of people. This guy is Mr. Television, okay? Cut the guy some slack. He knows what he's talking about, all right?
Yes, please.
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Kind of a big deal.
That's right. All right. I love my Gary Dietrich. Gary, so it will be quite the ride. We'll look forward to the effect it will have, and I'm sure there'll be real-time polling, post-debate polling, and then we'll do a huddle here the following Monday. Love our conversations, pal. CBS Television, iHeart Radio political analyst, Gary Dietrich. Bye, Gary.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on, right on. Yeah. I am. Well, was my audio much? I guess his audio was way louder than mine. Is that what we're hearing? I'm seeing that in the chat. Well, it's good. We'll know that for next time.
I'll check, but it looked good on my end.
It looked good.
I
Tony,
adjusted it. It was a little hot at the beginning, and then I fixed it. So
yeah, it looked. Tony is on top of that stuff. So when you say that stuff, chat, you're insulting Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
I have 3 other monitors running this show, just so you know. I have it on the phone, I have it on and I'm running it on my mixer. I'm seeing levels, and everything looks even for me. That's all I can do. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So
put that coffee down.
Okay. All right.
And Michael just showed up in lobby.
Oh, I love it. I got a point. I knew there was a little. He looked bigger than Mark, is what Josh says. I get it. That's a play on the fact that I love it. Josh is funny. Going to quickly have a sip of my coffee because I feel a ripple in the force. Do you feel it too, Kim? When we have a Pulitzer Prize winner in the green room,
it's like right before the great things happen.
You know what I'm saying?
No, totally. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, but I feel like almost there's a palpable sense that something of something changing. Anyway. I've got to send Michael Hiltzik some Coachella Valley coffee. It's so delicious. And you can get 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com with the discount code MarkT. You put it all together when you check out CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I've got to send some to Hiltzik because it's been too long. And I'm very excited about the fact that Hiltzik is going to be joining us. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy's a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. Everybody on your feet from Michael Hiltzik from the LA Times. Look at you. Hiltzik, it's been too long. You haven't changed a bit.
Well, I don't feel any different. But, by the way, I roast my own coffee.
I did not know that.
But I'm always happy to try something new, so...
Well, I'll tell you what, this is the best coffee I've ever tasted, and I have tasted coffee, as you know, all around the world. I'm a worldly man, as you're aware, Michael Hiltzik. And so
do you know who I am?
I'm a kind
of a big deal.
I'm just saying, Michael, I will send you some, and it will at least it will enhance your existing coffee experience. And,
I'm sure it will give me a mark to shoot for, so to speak.
Oh, good. Very well done. Very well done.
Also, while I'm at it, I want to introduce to your viewers this.
It's out, your book.
Well, it's not quite out. This is the Down Galley. So this is sort of the uncorrected proof, but that's the cover, and it will be out on February 18th.
Well, when you really want the Mark Thompson Show bump, you'll come here, we'll talk about the book, and we will move some books for you, pal.
You know I will do that.
You are a very, very smart guy. You're a very good writer. You write on any number of things. The LA Times gives you and I'm so glad they do, a really kind of broad canvas on which to paint. And it is with reluctance, then, that I ask you about the media and the treatment of Donald Trump. But you yourself have remarked on it in your column. And so I want to talk about, the jetliner view of the normalization of Trump. I mean, this guy is an insurrectionist. I mean, he attempted a coup. He you can say he's unhinged. He's not tethered by any kind of understanding of this is more sort of who the man is. But I think sort of from where I sit, he is just completely disqualified for public service. But what is also clear is that as his inanities build up, as the craziness that of things he says build up on the stump, that also is sort of washed away by the media in general. Now, I've given you a lot to comment on, but I just wonder if you could take a crack at some of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, over the last couple of weeks, I've learned a new term, and the term is sane washing. Have you heard this term?
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly what I'm talking
about.
This
is the process of the press sort of, trying to claim that there's sort of rationality in Trump's, blithering. And, the first example that I wrote about was this bizarre spiel he went on a week or so ago about how pupils are leaving their homes and going to school and coming back, having having suffered surgeries, gender-changing surgeries. And he aired this, as far as I can tell, the first time in an interview with Moms for Liberty, which is this book burning or book banning outfit that originated in Florida. And he went to their convention and he said, "This is what's going on. This is horrible." And it was just, you listen to it, you said, this is not, as I wrote, we have a rule here at the LA Times that we're not supposed to use terminology that, that relates to mental illness and apply it to people who we don't know for sure are mentally ill. And I wrote, look, let's be serious. This is something that's going on here that we need to comment on. And when I looked at how the other newspapers, including our own, which use an Associated Press dispatch, described what he said, it was just like no relationship between what he said and what they purported that he said. I mean, they said, well, he looked for, he mentioned some policies on gender discrimination. There was nothing like that. It was just this bizarre spiel. And then, there was another case, on Friday, I think, where he was appearing before the Economic Council of New York City, which is basically a collection of bankers and financiers, and was asked a question about what he would do about the rising cost of childcare. And he went on this completely unhinged rant about, how, he was going to make other countries pay taxes to the United States and this and that. But as I noticed, he had made mention at the very beginning of his answer, he had sort of name dropped Marco Rubio and Ivanka, his daughter, and that clicked on me. And I said, I know what he's talking about, because I wrote 2 or 3 columns about this idea that Ivanka and Rubio had back in 2018 or 2019 about allowing families to pay for family leave when they got a new child, either gave birth or adopted, but that they would pay for it by giving up some of their Social Security when they retired. And I wrote at the time that this was just nuts. It was bad for the families. It was bad for Social Security. It was bad in terms of retirement policy. And I speculated that I didn't think that Trump even knew what he was talking about. He sort of had this recollection in the dim recesses of his mind that he dredged up to say, oh, yeah, Rubio and Ivanka had some idea. Anyway, the press goes on and they are desperately searching for, some sort of rational nuggets in what he says. And there are none. And, and this has been bad, I think, for the country to sane wash a guy who really is crazy.
Yeah. I love that you pointed out in your column at the time the real trail of breadcrumbs you could find back to some sort of policy that was talked about, the kind of borrowing against Social Security if you want time off, if you want to think of it.
Yeah, and in fact, of course, he wasn't even talking about childcare, which is something that families have to pay for, for their children, to raise their children into adolescence. This proposal that he had dredged up was about family leave, for maybe 6 or 12 months at a time when the baby is brand new. So, it's, for reporters at the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal to basically translate that or transliterate that into, oh yeah, Trump had this idea and this is how he answered. He didn't answer it at all. And in fact, the woman, the lawyer who had asked him that question, went on Twitter and said, this was an insulting response from him. He didn't answer the question. He just, was out in left field. So.
Well, he was, the way in which he worked his way back to an applause line, that was very much Trumpian as well. I mean, he has the sense for the room, and you even mentioned the sense for the room that he had when he's talking to Mothers for Liberty or whatever. When he'll go hard right in front of Mothers for Liberty, he'll go wish-washy on women's reproductive rights when he's playing in sort of to a general audience. But the idea of his incoherence being washed, the sane washing that way. That's a real thing. I mean, and I like that you pointed that out, Michael Hiltzik. The idea somehow that you can cherry pick quotes from a blithering incoherence, and somehow if you just then talk about that from the perspective of different pundits weighing in on that quote, all of a sudden it makes it sound like you're talking about Trump policy.
Yeah, he could put words together into sentences that have sort of a distant relationship to grammatical truth. But, ChatGPT does that too, and it's not intelligent, even though it's called artificially intelligent. But, and I think that's why, the Harris campaign or the Harris-Walz campaign, had their finger on what's going on here when they tried to insist that his microphone when he wasn't, answering a question would be live at the debate tomorrow, because I think they were counting on him just, going off on a tangent and misbehaving. And I think we may yet see that. And it'll be interesting to see what the press, I think we can assume that he's just going to go off the deep end on one thing or another during the debate. And it'll be interesting to see if the press tries to sugarcoat this or sane wash it when, 30 million people will have watched it.
Yeah, he is capable of turning it up and turning it down. I always caution on this show, and I get a lot of blowback. I just think he is comfortable in front of those cameras and riffing around. And, he'll get enough help with the spinsters and the right-wing media, which dominates this country, despite the notion that the mainstream media is liberal. I think he's worked the refs well. I think the mainstream media, we just talked about it, the sane washing has a lot to do with the mainstream media and major newspaper outlets that lead the rest of mainstream media a lot of the time. Over the weekend, he said this stuff about removing immigrant gangs, and that's going to be a bloody story. He packed his comments over the weekend with a lot of stuff. One is that. Another is the recriminatory posture that he poses toward people who are his adversaries, right? He's basically saying, hey, all of you who work at polling stations, who are in charge of elections, and all of you in the media, when I win, you are all going to face prosecution. I mean, that's just it's an insane posture that he's taken. But both those stories have floated to the surface from his weekend statements.
Yeah, absolutely. And the press does not give the flavor of what he's saying, what he's talking about. And, maybe there's hope that he'll be off the leash tomorrow night. But, I think, our reporters and editors really need to do a better job than, they haven't done a good job at all. Covering him, and it may be that political reporters are eternally searching for a reason for their lives, to say, well, we're covering something, we're covering a debate among policies, but there's no policy coming from the Trump administration.
Underdog is saying this, and Pulitzer winner Michael Hiltzik will be called upon to respond. The mainstream media relentlessly criticized Biden for his mistakes, but never held Trump accountable for his numerous lies. It did seem like there was an asymmetry to everything, Michael Hiltzik.
I think that's true. The press certainly jumped on Biden for his performance at the first debate. And it was certainly, not great, but, Trump was absolutely incoherent when he had the microphone during that debate. And it just, seemed to go over the heads of the reporters covering that. And, and I think voters are simply not getting a sense of how unhinged he is, now more and more. You can look at how he was, in 2020 or 2016 and now, and it's clear that there's been a serious decline in his mental acuity.
So as we look at tomorrow night, I'm actually figuring, and look, this might be wrong. I mean, and you kind of noted, look, maybe the guy goes off with, this violent, incoherent rhetoric tomorrow night, but I don't think so. I think he's not this loose cannon within certain situations that we think him to be because we see him in other situations. If it plays to a kind of a draw, I feel as though then we just end up where you get what you want from it. Your guy, generically, your guy won based on whatever. We'll all cherry pick those things that we feel are most important. I feel as though, and again, I have nothing except just the general sense I feel that he's being underestimated. Maybe she's being overestimated a bit because she's a prosecutor and all these. I think she's extremely capable and competent, don't get me wrong. But I just think that I feel like it's playing toward a draw tomorrow night.
Well, who can tell? I mean, it's
right.
Anything can happen. I think she'll be cogent and intelligent, and she may try to needle him into an outburst because clearly he has a problem with control. But we'll see if he can really stay. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay on the straight and narrow. I think Democrats, Harris, everybody is hoping that he'll show, he'll behave like he always does. But when he's out in public and giving talks, these crazy ideas and this crazy verbiage sneaks in every time. So we'll see if he can, keep it in check tomorrow.
One of the things they did, and I'll let you go, but I just am remembering the last debate on ABC. I thought this was a really lame thing they did, and it was not talked about anywhere. They did this thing where after Biden spoke, and after Trump spoke as well, but usually after Trump spoke, they said, sir, you still have a minute and 10 seconds left and you haven't answered the question. There was that sort of the suggestion that you haven't addressed it. Do you want to say something more? With Biden, they said, sir, you still have 50 seconds left on the clock if you want to say something more. I thought that was lame because I'm really looking for the candidates to share their thoughts, make their statements, whatever. I'm not looking for it to necessarily fill the time of 2 minutes. I mean, it seemed like a poor exercise in whatever, that they were running a clock and saying, Mr. Hiltzik, you still have 15 more seconds if you want to, so he took a minute 45 instead of 2 minutes, whatever. I'm just hoping that the television part of things doesn't blunt our ability to get to know these people to the extent that we can in this artificial environment.
Well, what I'm hoping for, and I know I am not going to get it because I've seen this, these sorts of debates go on over and over again when they are being moderated by media stars, as tomorrow's will be, is that the moderators try to be polite to both sides and even-handed. If you compare that to the way, you see candidate debates go on in local races where there's a local journalist who really knows his or her stuff, or if you see debates from overseas in the UK or Australia, what have you, the moderators there really hold the candidates' feet to the fire. They do not let them get away with anything. And in this case, maybe Harris will be better at exposing Trump's lies and misstatements, when her mic is on. But it really should be up to the moderators to hold both candidates to a standard, and we just do not see that in American debates.
Yeah, it is true. And there's sort of a, what is this? It will be a Trump center of attention circus again, and his polling will go up because they love the lies he spews, says Mindy. This is interesting from Rob. Don't call them moderators, they're observers. I think this is what Michael Hiltzik's point is, isn't it, Michael? That, you're in the American media sphere, your slavish fealty to neutrality makes you sort of loath to call anybody out on anything, and it's really frustrating. So anyway, look, I love that we've reconnected. This love affair is way on again, and again, I'll remind everyone that Michael Hiltzik, the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer for the LA Times, and I went to the same university, which makes me Pulitzer Prize adjacent. Thank you very much. I look forward to your writing, and we'll talk again. And the book, of course, coming in February, Golden State, The Making of California. Thanks again, Michael Hiltzik.
All right, anytime.
All right, talk soon. Michael Hiltzik.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. Thank you for being here. Smash the like button like a boss. I'm telling you, it helps us and it costs you nothing.
Smash it
I wanted
with your
to
iron rod.
also thank people who have shared the show across other platforms. When you share the show, or you share a short, or you share an interview on your Facebook page or wherever, it helps build the footprint of the show, and that's a really cool thing too. So thank you. It is a difficult thing that we do as we try to build audience, and we start, again, just in this homegrown way. And when you are part of it, it really does help. So just to give you a sense of things, we've done a lot of politics, and this is it's the heat of the political season. So you'll be tolerant of that. This show is really doing a lot of politics. Hiltzik is great. Dietrich is great. Tomorrow, David K. Johnston. We've got Anthony Davis. We have all of these people who are regulars. And then we have a special group that cycles through. Here's this from Sheila. Sheila can be all over the place. She can be all over me. But she states things sternly and with an emphatic certainty. And I say that because of one thing. All of her emails are in what? Anybody? Capital letters. That's yes.
I hate the capital letters.
Sheila says, "Hi, Mark. Trump doesn't debate. He bullies. He is not a debater. He is just a bully, plain and simple. In the end, bullies don't win. Have a good day," says Sheila. Wow. Well, I'm...
Seriously, what the...
I don't know. He is a bully.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
I would say this to you, Sheila, and I don't mean to concern you, but there is emphasis, if you will look back in your history books, of Trump having won before. So this bully thing, and bullies never win, I wish bullies never won. But I believe this particular bully has won before. And he actually, I think, you may want to check it. You can Google it. I believe he was the president once before. That's my recollection.
Maybe we're tired of bullies. Maybe we're done. We're bullied out.
I think that the tiring of Trump's act is a reasonable, it's a reasonable element that may play into the outcome. I don't know to what extent it will carry the day, but I do feel as though it's getting tired. And this is interesting from Wes, and then I'll get to Kim's news. Wes says, Trump says he is going to end all wars. Never says how. He's going to deport all illegals. Doesn't say how or where the money comes from. Yeah, and
I heard him say he could end a war with a phone call. That's all it would take for him. One phone call.
He didn't end all wars on his watch, as you know. He took out Soleimani as a distraction to what was going on with his impeachment trial. He's was it his impeachment trial or his legal issues at the time? I'm trying to remember which. But anyway, the management of the military in Trump's case was something that was done completely in a theatrical way, and there was no sense that he would hold back on the military. He sent our troops to our own southern border to address this influx, as he was making it sound like. It was really a Fox News Channel story of illegal immigrants. By the time they got to the southern border, it was just a few hundred of them. I mean, again, T-shirt and jeans and water bottles. And yet, at Christmas time, he sent the military down there. It was theater. He views the entire thing as theater. All of it is a photo op. So, but I view him as an extremely dangerous guy from the standpoint of the military as well. You can argue whether or not we should be involved in any number of military situations worldwide. I'd say yes, we are involved in way too many, and they last way too long. But the notion somehow that Trump is going to end the forever wars, please. He is. That's not what he's about. Kim's News, then True Crime Corner for a change of pace and a palate cleanser. And gosh, I have some other stuff too. I don't know. I may have to go 4 hours today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, doubtful, but. All right, Kim's News, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And here it is, almost Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump getting in a final day now of debate prep ahead of tomorrow's nationally televised showdown in Philadelphia. It is likely to be their only debate before Election Day. The stakes high, national polls showing a very tight race for the White House. ABC News will host, but every network will be carrying this debate starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Congress is returning today after a 6-week recess as a possible government shutdown looms. Here we go again. Lawmakers will need to scramble to beat the deadline since funding for many agencies will run out September 30th. They've got another stopgap bill likely needing the approval of Congress. They are very far from reaching an agreement on a full year of funding bill. So we'll get another stopgap likely. As Mark mentioned earlier, we've got wildfires raging in California and Nevada, forcing thousands to leave their homes. Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo declared a state of emergency Sunday as the Davis fire burned south of Reno. Governor Gavin Newsom in California declaring an emergency in response to the line fire pictured here. That has burned nearly 18,000 acres in San Bernardino County. Nearly 70 wildfires are burning in the western United States. We have another one in Clear Lake. This dangerous wildfire is burning. Another danger. There's an egg recall, a multi-state egg recall underway after more than 60 salmonella cases were reported. The CDC says Wisconsin-based Milo's Poultry Farms has begun recalling all eggs branded Milo's Poultry Farms and Tony's Fresh Market. Oh, Tony, look at you.
Tony,
9 states.
look at you,
I know. The states include Virginia, Iowa, Minnesota, Colorado, Utah, California, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. No reports of death, but again, 60 cases of salmonella. So,
well, Tony, what angered you?
Ooh. Governor Gavin Newsom is praising a decision to keep guns banned in most public places here in the state of California. This includes libraries, sports arenas, casinos, museums, restaurants, bars, parks, and playgrounds. All the places you don't really want to see a gun. A court of appeals ruled this does not apply, though, to banks, churches, hospitals, or public transit.
You can bring a gun into all those places?
Apparently, yeah, I don't know if you can, but they're not banned. I mean, maybe
so you can bring a gun into a bank.
Maybe they had to say that if you're a security guard.
You just have to watch what you say. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, God. Lord. Governor Newsom says while the state fought to expand the restrictions, he feels this will help protect against mass shootings and other gun violence as well.
Thank God we don't have a lot of guns like those other countries on Earth. Oh, wait. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
California is on the verge of not having any plastic bags at checkout. Those thicker ones still being offered to millions of shoppers could be banned for good. It turns out they didn't reduce plastic waste as intended.
Of course not. Courtney just throws them away. It's absolutely outrageous.
What are you supposed to do with them?
I spend most of my day chasing down those thick bags that are ending up in landfill. It's horrible.
You spend most of your day doing that?
I do. I spend, how many, I log all my hours very carefully. I spent 11 hours doing that over the weekend. That's not most of the day, I guess, but it's a lot of the day.
Well, I mean, you could reuse them as, to pick up pet waste, but they're still then going into the landfill. So what are you supposed
what?
to do
I
with
like
them?
to keep my guns in them, which is
Oh,
really...
is that what it is?
Yeah, it's America, so I put all my guns into my thick plastic bags.
Who is having that conversation?
Well, I am. I think it might be a good idea.
Not very California of you, I have to say.
Yeah.
So there are new bills to require stores only to offer recycled paper bags. This legislation currently sitting on Governor Gavin Newsom's desk, and if he signs it, the changes will begin in 2026, and your time mark will be freed up to do other things besides bag chasing.
Wow, thank
Isn't
you.
that
That's
nice?
kind of...
Yeah.
I really have to figure out what I'm going to do. Maybe another show. Would that be... Yeah, why not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You have so much to say. The state is investing more to protect and restore and improve our coastline. California, an environmental show. The state of California has approved more than $48 million for 22 community projects, one of them for a 25-acre park in San Diego with a beach, a boat launch, and other recreational amenities. Another to reduce the risk of fires at state parks in Santa Clara County. There's also a chunk of money going to programs that will give thousands better access to explore the coast of California. A sad situation. I mean, I guess you could say happy and sad at the same time. The widow of the late...
to log in. She didn't send me the link.
Uh-oh, Courtney having issues over there. The widow of the late hockey player Johnny Gaudreau is revealing that she is pregnant with the couple's third child. Meredith Gaudreau announced the news at her husband's memorial service in Pennsylvania. The NHL star and his brother Matthew were hit and killed by an alleged drunk driver as they were biking in southern New Jersey just a few days ago, a day before their sister was to be married. Meredith and Johnny also have a 2-year-old daughter and a 7-month-old son, and now she's pregnant with their third.
Gosh, that's sad.
Speaking of sports, the first Monday night football game of the year kicks off tonight. The San Francisco 49ers host Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets in Santa Clara. Yeah.
You know it.
The game marks Rodgers' first return to play after rupturing his Achilles tendon during week 1 of Monday Night Football last season. The kickoff set for 8:15 p.m. Eastern from Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. And speaking of football, Kendrick Lamar will be headlining the next Super Bowl 59 halftime show.
That's
the
pretty
NFL,
cool.
Announcing Sunday Lamar will perform at the league's championship game come February in New Orleans. So there you go.
Man, that's going to be quite the halftime show.
I think so. This report, sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The vanilla tea is on what? On tap today.
On point.
On point. On point is what I was looking for. Yes. So good. So good. I'm telling you what. And you've got what in your coffee cup?
Oh, well, first of all, I've got the hopes and dreams of a generation in my coffee cup.
Oh, is that what it is?
First of all, that's absolutely right, Kim. You don't realize how the responsibilities that I have when I pick up my coffee cup. I'm picking it up for an entire generation of coffee drinkers in here. Oh, my God. The warm feel of Coachella Valley coffee. Courtney, you are also a massive fan of the cold brew.
Yes, the cold brew is nothing short of life-changing.
And I would just say we ran out of cold brew, and it was as though a five-alarm fire around here. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody to check it out.
Yes, absolutely. And guests that have come over have really enjoyed it.
Everybody.
It's spectacular.
Right. We have offered it to many guests, and those who have gone for coffee, way happy. We love our Coachella Valley coffee. Of course, it's all organic and from women-owned farms, and you'll find all kinds of things on their website, from tea, loose leaf tea, bag tea, and there's the same care about all of their products that they apply to their coffee. The hand-roasted beans, sourced fresh crop. Go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Enter Mark T at checkout. It is your discount code, and you can share it, I suppose. I was going to say don't share, but you can share it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about sharing. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Mark T at checkout for 10% off everything and anything from Coachella Valley Coffee.
That's not fake.
That's real. It is real. Take it from the Fouch. Good stuff.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
See, Obama would love to be the Antichrist.
My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you.
Put that coffee down.
Oh, girl, baby girl, don't even play.
I only like people that like me.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
Oh my God.
No.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Don't talk to me that way.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for. And I also want to know what happened to the pictures I was supposed to see this week.
Where are my weed smokers at?
I love it when you're angry.
Good day, sir. Seriously, what the
Right on, right on. Yeah, love everybody. We've got Tony on board today. We've got Kim on board today. These are our people.
Thanks,
These
Tony.
are the, what would you call it? The lifeblood
Kim, how are you?
Of the show.
Definitely.
And then, of course, coursing through our veins every day, the people who make this show happen. Yeah. We do have the best incidental music, says Josh. Thank you, Josh, for recognizing it.
Big shout out.
It's not something that we do casually. We put a lot of work into our music because, you know, music is something that we have to pay for or avoid paying for or find, and it's not easy. So thank you, everybody who supports the show in all the different ways that you do, sharing the show or financially. My favorite McAllister, Lucy McAllister.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to the Luce. $20. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you so much.
I very much appreciate it. Wes is in the house. Do the kids still say in the house? Well, we still say it.
Yeah, I think so.
Wes with a $5 super sticker. Big shout out. Wes is a regular
Thank you so
supporter of the
much.
show. Regular supporter of the show. And
Wow.
Tess Downey, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Why are you yelling?
I'm yelling because Tess just hit us with a $50 super sticker. I mean, come on.
That's incredible.
Put Tess back up there for a second, Tony. I'm luxuriating with Tess. How dare you take her off screen?
Thanks, Tony.
$50. Wow.
Wow. I mean,
That helps. It really
Yeah.
does. We're crowdfunded, so you'll pardon me for making a big thing out of the part of the crowd that funds. Vilma, there is a section of American voters that are never polled, says Vilma, with a $5 super chat.
Big shout out.
There is more than a section of American voters that are never polled. I would agree with that. I mean, the polling, though, is statistically, if done well, accurate enough to give you a sense of even those elements or sections of American voters that are not polled. That's the idea of the margin of error, etc. So if you really look at polling, it should encompass all the different factions of the American electorate in this case. The lady Beatrice with a $5 super chat. Darth Cheeto still thinks he can win with Jedi Master Kamala, so popular. He is delusional.
Big shout out.
Wow. Well, it's going to be fun watching the debate with Lady Beatrice. She is way on to the Kamala party. No Contendo says the Tennessee VW factory, 6 GOP governors tried to stop the union vote. Governor, 6 GOP, no, I don't think it was governors that he wants there. Anyway, No Contendo is right in that there are a lot of efforts on the part of GOP governors to, I think actually you are saying governors there, trying to stop union votes. There's been every manner of both a political strategy and a legal strategy applied to try to stop union votes. And that is a huge part. If you're a union member and you're interested in that plank of your party, that should be a huge reason to vote Democrat. Again, that may be, though, even though you're a union member, not the reason you're voting. You may be voting on something else completely. No Contendo, mainstream media should box 45 in with policing questions, i.e. Tyreek Hill, Jano, Goon Squad, Brave Cave. He promotes police brutality and back the blue. That's a really interesting question, No Contendo, and I'd love to get into it maybe tomorrow a bit, because I think the policing question is one that the Democrats historically struggle on. And the reason, and again, we can talk about this more tomorrow, but the reason that the Democrats often struggle on it is because when it comes down to cracking down on bad cops, Democrats and Democratic leadership is typically part of that effort. And even with Kamala Harris, and if you look in San Francisco as what's happening with Brooke Jenkins, and even in Los Angeles, when you look at what's happening there with the DA, you find yourself with a difficult distinction that you're making between backing the blue and also backing the efforts to clean up the blue. Mark Petrie with a $12 super sticker.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Mark, thank you, sir. And Gordon Groft, we're back. Did you miss us?
Big shout out.
Miss you. We almost closed the place down.
Thank you so
so much for returning. Wow. Loved it. Kim may be the queen of kindness, but she's no one's echo chamber MT. I applaud you for inviting diverse opinions, even remaining respectful with the trolls. Yeah. Well, Louise, thank you.
Big shout
out. I try
out.
to be respectful, but once in a while I'm pressed to the very limits of my tolerance. And thank you, Teacher Lori, for jumping on my segment in the TYT land last Friday, just a few days ago. I was on TYT, and they're a political, if you don't know what TYT is, they're great stuff they do over there. You can just put TYT in on YouTube and you can see them. And she said, I was telling everyone in the chat to see you on YouTube Monday through Friday from 11 to 1 Pacific. Wow. Teacher Lori throwing Mark a bone. Very unusual.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thank you, Teacher Lori. All right. We've delayed long enough. Mondays bring us to the world of true crime. This is True Crime Corner.
Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
Right on. How about it for my other half, better half, Courtney?
Hello. Did you talk about the electricity issue, the power issue?
I think I did. Yes, yeah. I think I did because I remember Tony having to help me through what with these trans.
What is it? Is it a transmitter?
No, it's a transformer.
Transformer, exactly.
Yeah. I thought transformers are those things that can transform themselves into like cars, and then they can become a person, like a robot. Yeah, Tony's muted, but I know he's pointing to probably his transformer toy.
Give me a minute, I'll grab him. I have a stack of them.
So when they said the transformer's blown up, I'm thinking I was expecting some big robot at the end of the street that can become can't it become something else? Anyway.
It does become like a game of, not a game, but like telephone, because one person says transformer, then it's transpotter, then it's transmitter, and suddenly you have no idea what's blown.
You're so right. We had no idea, but the fact is we had no electricity. 300 homes around us. So there is a transformer that Tony is throwing.
I hope that was I hope that was in the subterranean area.
That would really be cool.
Transformer blew.
Yeah.
That would have been great. But now we're here, and we're talking about a case that you brought to my attention. I was working on something else, and Mark and I watched a documentary last night, and we were really moved and compelled by this story. And so we're going to talk about this today. And it includes one of our favorite TV shows, right? Ever?
It does. And this is a story that I think some, maybe many of you, will be familiar with already. Even so, there were details that I was unaware of. So I'm looking forward to visiting some of those. But it's a credit to you that you're very nimble, that you were planning something. You'd actually spent many hours on it. You know, Courtney
I had.
preps like crazy for these segments.
Yep.
And she said, I think I'm going to do this story instead. So without any further delay, please proceed, Courtney.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about the murder of Martha Puebla, but it is also the story of Juan Catalan. So Martha Puebla was 16 years old, and she was at home, and someone was murdered outside of her house. Her friend had come to get her at 2 o'clock in the morning so they could, quote, go out, end quote. And as her friend Sophie was at her window trying to get Martha to leave the house, Sophie's boyfriend was murdered in his car as he waited for them. This all happened in the year of 2003. So the police discover that there are two men that killed this boyfriend. His name was Christian Vargas, that was sitting outside of the home of Martha Puebla. One was Jose Ledesma, and then the other was Mario Catalan, who is the brother of the person that we just mentioned, and the story is about Juan. So Martha becomes an eyewitness of sorts to this murder of Christian that happened outside of her house. But she knows who did it. If you go down to visuals, Tony, I can show. She knows that it was, if you go down one more, if you go that, thank you. So she knows that it was the Vineland Boys. Now, this was a gang in North Hollywood this gang was formed by two high school students in 1988. Yep, man. And they defected from a street gang called 18th Street Gang, and they started this gang. And they were known to be particularly violent because they were sort of a newer street gang and somewhat, as I read, alleged, proving themselves of sorts. So the Vineland Boys, they kill this young kid, Christian Vargas, outside of the window of Martha Puebla. The police come, they interview Martha Puebla, and they have her as an eyewitness on the stand. But when she is on the stand as an eyewitness, she says, I did not see the murderer, because she knows if she is considered a rat, she will lose her life.
Yeah.
And so what the police did, if you go down, Tony, for the visuals, is they got a sketch of who this person was. So this is allegedly the person who murdered Christian Vargas. This was a sketch of, I think, a composite of both Sophie and Martha's account of the killer.
Yeah, based on the two descriptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you go down, so the police took what they call as a six-pack. So it's a visual of 6 individuals who look like that sketch. And then they circled this person here at the bottom in the middle. That is Juan Catalan. And they put MP here, Martha Puebla, and then they wrote, this is the person who murdered her friend's boyfriend. You can see that all if you're watching in the visual. That was all done by the police. Martha never said any of that. And you know what? It is that got Martha killed.
So the police, again, just to put a point on it, they phonied this up. They have the 6-pack, but then they circled this as having been positively ID'd by Martha. And as you say, because that word got out that Martha identified this guy.
Yep.
That she was talking to the cops is the idea.
She was talking to the cops.
And they knew that she was talking to the gang did, and they killed her.
Yes. So the cops.
But the guy circled didn't kill her.
Didn't kill her. So if you go down, this is Juan Catalan. So his brother there were 2 men that killed Christian Vargas. His brother was an accomplice to that. And so it was alleged that Juan went and murdered Martha 11 days after the initial eyewitness testimony in defense of his brother Mario. But Juan never did. And suddenly it became a he said, they said sort of situation between the police and Juan. And he was desperate to find an alibi that would show that he did not kill Martha. And Martha was murdered outside of her house 11 days after the eyewitness testimony in May of 2013. A man came up to her, said, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm Martha, you know me." And he shot her multiple times and she was killed.
16 years old.
16 years old. Juan Catalan, who you're looking at now, is 19 when all of this happens. So the police go to Juan. They show him that six-pack. They say that you have been positively identified by an eyewitness, Martha Puebla, and so we are coming to arrest you. And so they do, and he goes to trial. He finds an attorney named Todd Melnick. If you go down, it's really interesting. If you go to Todd's website, he's got like all the Netflix and everything.
Now he's very famous.
Now he's really famous. But I will say, and we talked about this last night, he took on this case before Larry David was an HBO were ever a part of this.
Yeah, so later in the case, for those who don't know, Larry David and HBO become part of it, and the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. But more to the point, he just, as it was represented anyway, he just said, it just doesn't make sense. This guy didn't do this, and so I decided to take it. And he's not making any money. This guy doesn't have any money to pay Todd Melnick, but Todd took the case pro bono.
Yep. So Todd takes the case, and he's asking Juan, did anything happen that night? Like, where were you? What did you
what's
do
your
that
alibi?
night?
Where were you? If you didn't do this, where can we put you somewhere else that would make it impossible for you to have been the killer?
And it's Todd's girlfriend that reminds him, you were at the Dodger game. You had 4 tickets. You took 2 friends. One was a cousin. And you took your daughter. And you went to the Dodgers game. And there was it was sort of nondescript, right? It was like, we went to the game. I bought my daughter some candy and some food and some water. And then we bought playing cards or whatever for the Dodgers, or baseball cards for the Dodgers. And we left. But Juan soon remembers that there was a camera crew at that Dodgers game where they played the Atlanta Braves. And that camera crew was not a crew that was capturing content for any sort of sports outlet. It was a different camera crew. And so he mentions that. And Todd Melnick goes to the communications office for the Dodgers and starts to ask who was filming on that night. And he talks about, in the show that we watched, or the documentary, flipping through the appointment book, if you will, of the Dodgers. And it's blank page, blank page, blank page. And then that night, which was May 12th, 2013, sure enough, there is a production company that shot at that game. He doesn't know it's HBO. He has a production company name and a telephone number. And when he calls that telephone number, the person on the other end says HBO. So he talks to what was the producers of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And yes, they were there shooting an episode of the show, which I will mention is called The Carpool Lane. And Variety rated it as the 7th best episode ever of Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's very funny. The premise is, or the storyline is, Larry David is very late to attend a Dodgers game. And there's a ton of Los Angeles traffic, as there would be. And so he picks up a lady of the night who approaches his car. And she becomes his passenger so that he can drive in the carpool lane, which has no traffic. And it's very funny. And he takes her to the game. And there they are enjoying the game. Now, there's 53,000 people at this game. 53,000. And they happen to be shooting in 2 different aisles of all of the aisles in the entire Dodger Stadium. And one of those aisles was where Juan Catalan was sitting. So if you could believe it, Larry David is walking up and down the aisle. He's going down to a friend who has much better seats than him. That's part of the storyline and the comedy of the show, is that he's got these terrible seats and he's sitting with a lady of the night. And sure enough, on the cameras, they capture Juan Catalan with his daughter. And this is the exact shot. Now, during production and when they were shooting, no one was allowed to walk up and down the aisle because Larry David was walking up and down the aisle during those shots. But a somewhat absent-minded PA allowed Juan Catalan to walk into the shot with his daughter, probably because his daughter was 6 years old and wanted to sit down.
Yeah,
and
he held him initially, apparently, but then he sort of said, just go ahead. And that is Juan and his daughter right there.
That is Juan and his daughter.
In the shot that actually lived on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yep, it is. And so if you go down, you can actually see them circled in the crowd. Now, what's great about this footage is that you can see at the bottom, there's a timestamp. So it proved not only that Juan Catalan was at the game that night, but in fact the time in which he was at the game that night.
Yeah, that time code TCR 903. So that's time code is then linked to real time.
Yes.
Which is why then that becomes a timestamp that's important.
Yeah. Now they take this to the trial.
They think this is it.
Pre-trial. It's pre-trial. And
when you're watching, you're thinking, this is it. I mean, this absolutely corroborates the fact that he was at the Dodgers game and couldn't possibly kill this person. But the zeal of the prosecution is what plays next, which is, that doesn't mean you couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock now, but in this shot, but the person wasn't killed until after 10.
Exactly. And so then what Todd Melnick does, who's the attorney that we were talking about earlier, the defense attorney for Juan Catalan, he remembers that in the O.J. Simpson trial, which he was watching and I think providing commentary around, they used cell phone pings to provide his location. So it is, in fact, a cell phone call from Juan's girlfriend to Juan, placing him at the Dodgers Stadium at 10:12, that in fact makes it impossible for him to have been in the area at the exact time in which Martha Puebla was killed. And so the combination of the video footage and the phone call make it so that he is not taken to trial for this case. Yeah.
I mean, it's a remarkable thing.
You know what's also really interesting is his cousin, who went to the game with him, lived down the street from Martha. So actually 15 minutes after she was killed, he was in that area dropping off his cousin. The whole thing is crazy. It is a remarkable story. That is Juan Catalan with his attorney, Todd Melnick, with the footage that got him off of this case. And the interviews with Larry David are funny. It's funny. This feels like it could be a storyline on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Also because Juan Catalan had no idea who Larry David was, no idea what Curb Your Enthusiasm was.
Neither one of these guys knew Larry David or Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's remarkable because we think, Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, he's a huge star. But both of them said, I didn't know him. I mean, Juan, I understand. I mean, maybe not. But Todd Melnick, I would have thought would know it. Just it's like that kind of, it would have filtered into his circles. Now, there is another part of this. I mean, this is a remarkable thing. I mean, it's a miracle. And as is noted, if he's not in Curb Your Enthusiasm in this weird way, if he's not captured by cameras, then he's probably... I wouldn't say probably. He's going to be found guilty because of the zeal of a prosecution that is buoyed by, honestly, the misdeeds of the cops. I mean, the detectives.
If you go down, Tony, a couple of visuals for anybody who's watching. I have pictures of the two detectives who... fraudulently circled Juan Catalan's photo in that six-pack, which not only put Juan Catalan potentially on trial for this case, and he was in jail for 6 months, or prison, I should say, but it also was the reason that Martha Puebla was killed.
Yeah, I mean, there's some blood on the hands of these guys, and I understand how difficult detective work. I mean, I understand in theory anyway how difficult it is, but this is just so way out of bounds. And you do, in the documentary, hear from these guys, and they go, I admit that was a false. They admit under oath. They don't admit in some interview. They admit under oath that it was a falsehood and that it was a lie, that they circled that picture, and the whole thing was built on a lie.
They could build, if you go up, Tony, a little bit, there's a sketch, and then there's Juan Catalan, and then there's Jose Ledesma, and Jose Ledesma is the one that put the hit out on Martha and is the one who killed Christian Vargas, who we were talking about with the initial murder. And you can see the resemblance.
Sure.
But they manufactured this story because there was enough circumstantial evidence to prosecute Juan. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Mario was an accessory to Jose.
Was his brother.
And that was his brother.
When you say Mario.
Yeah, Mario Catalan.
Yeah. Right. And that might have, been enough. But it's a remarkable story for the 1 in a million quality that, or as I believe it was John Watson who said it was 1 in a million. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. And apparently Juan Catalan bought the DVD set of Curb Your Enthusiasm after he got off. Yeah.
It's just terrific.
And so, but it's a really fascinating story and certainly a really crazy situation that freed a man. Yeah, and saved his life.
That's the documentary. It's called Long Shot. It's been out there for a little while. It's on Netflix. We really enjoyed it. It's short, which I also like. It's like I turned to Courtney at one point, and they're in the middle of talking to the detectives, I think, or to the lawyer. And I thought, you know what? If this were one of these new true crime things, I'd be in episode 4 right now before I get to this. I mean, they just drag the story out. And I just loved how taut this was. It was really good.
No, and when I was constructing how to tell this story, there's less coverage on Martha and the initial murder of Christian Vargas, which makes sense because the documentary is about Juan and what happened. But it really was. It was really done well. And they interviewed all of the stars of that particular episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Larry David shows up as only Larry David could in those interviews. So.
This is true when it comes to the cops trying to get the prosecutions and convictions. Cops and prosecutors are scored, in quotes, on number of convictions. Make the numbers police quotas, says Mark Petrie. I mean, there's truth to this, that there's a premium on getting these convictions. And that's why you get the zealous prosecutor who's overzealous in certain instances.
I will add this, and I will caveat it as alleged. I have no evidence. I'm just mentioning this because it came up in my research. This gang, the Vineland Boys, had killed a Los Angeles police officer earlier in the year of 2003 or the end of 2002. I don't know if that also fueled their interest in this case because the Vineland Boys were part of it. But there certainly was a lot going on.
But Juan wasn't a member of the Vineland
But
Boys.
he wasn't a member of the Vineland Boys.
So it's like, why do you go after a member of the Vineland Boys? With that description, you could go after a lot of them because that's a very familiar face based on that description. It's sort of a generic
if you read
sketch.
It's like, it's a very generic eyewitness account of who killed Christian Vargas.
I was moved by this story, and it's a fascinating story. And finally, a court works to exonerate someone. But because of the way in which it was handled initially, someone is dead. The 16-year-old is dead, right?
This 16-year-old Martha Puebla is dead. And that did not need to happen. It was completely manufactured by the cops. When she went on as an eyewitness into a pre-trial of Jose Ledesma, she in fact said, "I did not see the shooter," because she knew what would happen. Yes.
Courtney, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, love that.
Thank you for watching this with me last night.
Of course.
It was great. I mean, it was well done.
That is True Crime Corner for today.
Yeah.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts, Courtney, before you leave?
No, just thank you for having me. I'm really enjoying Only Murders in the Building. That's another true crime scripted show that's done very well. And it has a lot of fine art, which is the
that's kind of your thing.
So it's always
Thank
really
you, Courtney,
interesting.
says Francine.
Oh, thank you, Francine. That's so nice.
You can correspond with Courtney through the comments section. She will be in touch with you.
I'm working on... Oh, yeah?
I'm sorry. You know what I'm watching, Courtney? Is The Perfect Couple.
Oh, I know. I want to see that.
Trailer,
I know.
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's about murder. So it made me think of you. Because, anytime someone gets brutally offed, I'm thinking Courtney would love this. Yeah.
I hate that stuff. It's everywhere.
Mark said to me last night, "I have a true crime story for you." And I said, "Did anyone die?" because that's really my litmus test.
Well, one of the things I liked about that story is that it had, at least at the end, not this story, but the one we just did, had some Hollywood ending, as I say, somewhere the guy actually is exonerated, but somebody did die in it all. But the perfect couple, which Tony just flashed up there for a second, you can put it back up.
I really want to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's intriguing. And how many parts is this? 70? I have to get to I have to watch.
It's a series, so yeah, it's gonna take your time.
Yeah, my God, man, where did people get all this time to watch this stuff, man?
I watched My Worst Ex on Netflix, and I was gonna cover it, but it is particularly dark. It covers domestic violence, and that it's very hard to watch.
I don't know. That's like the Dateline stuff.
I have to say though, every week recently, the top streamed content is something to do with true crime, including Perfect Couple, which we just saw.
Well, that's why we exploit you here. We're exploiting your
exploit away, please.
Yeah. You're a good storyteller, Courtney. Thanks for sharing these interesting true crime stories with us, says B.A. Ware.
Thank you. That means a lot. I know that there are some in the audience that just want me to get off and talk about politics.
Well, there's some in the audience. There's some in the studio. Me. I want to get back to politics and other news.
Wow.
I don't want to do this, but I am exploiting you because I think that it gives people a variety of stuff, and I'm committed to that variety.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there.
What?
I know. All right. Look, Courtney, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoy seeing you all every week. Kim and Tony are wonderful and such help, and getting me here on Mondays. So thank you.
All right. There she is. Courtney, everybody.
Courtney.
Nice job. Bye, Courtney.
Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Everyone, we are winding down as we do.
I thought we were going for 4 hours.
Well, you know what? I would go for 4 hours, Kim. Don't tempt me. I will steamroll past your whatever show whatever the hell that show's called.
I thought we were just going to push on through.
I am going right out. I mean, I've got it in me, Kim.
I didn't need this. I didn't have to do this.
No, exactly. I am absolutely ready.
Our primary focus is not to get out the vote.
Well, that's your man who's...
I think I'm entitled to personal attacks.
Okay. I mean, there is a growing sense that Donald Trump may be a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if, as I say, I don't know exactly what his power will be within the format that they've laid out. The mute button, as you know, will be pressed when the person not speaking or not having the question directed toward them is waiting. But I don't know. I mean,
they want to put me in prison.
I think that the world of Donald Trump is informed by getting past a lot of rules and regs and laws.
They don't want me to be a little bit nasty. They want to put me in prison. Me.
Yeah.
Me. Of all people, me.
But he's no stranger to television. And so this environment in which he...
That was one of the most successful shows ever done.
Yes, that's right. The Apprentice. I don't know if it was one of the most successful shows ever done, but it was dominant, and it was successful enough to essentially create a completely fake image for a failed businessman, a failed, lawless businessman who has never had a good idea, who lost money with an Atlantic City casino. How do you do that? It's almost impossible. He did it twice.
If people are saying, and this I've read and I've heard, and we've talked to David K. Johnston about it, who will be with us again tomorrow and Wednesday, by the way. But I've heard that he is kind of losing it a little bit, that he's getting more nonsensical. He's saying things that are not sane. And so do we expect the same Donald Trump from 4 years ago to show up tomorrow night? I don't know.
Well, I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I think that the Trump who shows up tomorrow night doesn't have to be the Trump from 4 years ago if you're a Trumpy and you support Trump. He just has to be the right Trump for the moment. And I know that that's kind of a generic statement, but there's only so much we can know about what's going to happen tomorrow night.
Maybe he has his Joe Biden moment. You know, maybe this is a debate where all of a sudden he's not standing next to someone who looks more feeble than him, and he's the one that looks like the old guy that's on his way out.
Well, I don't think he's going to have a Joe Biden moment of the sort that we saw. I don't think he's going to come across feeble. I don't think. But here is the way I would say you might have a moment like that. If you saw A Few Good Men, there's that moment with Jack Nicholson on the stand, and Tom Cruise is baiting him essentially about ordering the code red.
You can't handle the truth.
Right. You can't handle you're damn right I ordered the code red. Who's going to be on that wall? Who's going to protect you?
Yeah.
That was a victory for the prosecution, right? They wanted that moment for Nicholson, his character, to lose it, the general to lose it. Now, there may be a moment like that. It's a lot to wish for. It's like wishing for a witness on the witness stand generally in a trial to break down like in a Law and Order episode and just say, yes, I did it. You know, I couldn't take it anymore. That generally does not happen. Trump, and this is why I get to this thing that people give me a hard time sometimes with the emails and in the chat. Trump is a skilled television performer. He may be clunky to you. To me, his whole con was clunky. I mean, but his repping of strength and just his general vibe apparently landed with enough people. He hates the same thing that a lot of other people hate. He hates them, you know, those people that are ruining your country. You know them, all the thems. The immigrants, the media, the Democrats, the blue states, the Californians. He is expressing something that is boiling in a lot of people who feel left out of the economy. They feel left out of any sort of success. So they are looking for a hook on which to hang their grievance. That's what's happening. And Trump, first go round, was the great hook that they could hang their grievances on, meaning he gave them the hooks. He gave them those people. Hillary Clinton, the Democrats, the elites, whatever it might be. This time around, it's a little harder. We've been through Trump once. He isn't the change agent that he reps himself as being, but he still is singing the song of hate that he was singing before. And he's even added a little bit to the hate, right? He now talks about jailing those who are his adversaries, imprisoning those who disagree with him, those who are involved in the election, those who are involved in the media, in the adversarial media. So Trump is still a potent force in this particular country, given this particular configuration. And the last thing I would say, also given the configuration of the election, the way we do elections is effed up. It's not based on the popular vote. I've said it before. He'll lose. He'll lose. He'll be steamrolled in the actual popular vote. But the Electoral College is all he has to win.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting night. It'll be tomorrow night. Now, prior to that, you'll hear from David K. Johnston here on the show tomorrow. Is there anything else tomorrow that I need to mention, Kim?
David K. Johnston is really the big thing. We have Jefferson Graham will be here as well.
That's
good.
It's Tech Tuesdays. We do Tech Tuesday segment. The other thing I would say, and a little program note, is for Wednesday.
Yeah.
Following the debate, David K. Johnston is going to come back on with us, and we're really excited about that. So some takes on that from David K. Johnston. That's on Wednesday. I also expect Anthony Davis to roll through again from the Midas Touch Network. No shortage of opinions in our chat as well. And if you have an email or you have a slightly longer reaction to things you see or things you hear, please share them. Such a cool group that we have on our stream. The Niners play tonight, and I will say that and you know our show comes out. There it is, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. Thank you for putting that up there, whoever put it up. We come out of the San Francisco Bay Area originally as a radio show. Now we live here across all these platforms, so you'll forgive us if we have a little love in our heart for the Niners. They play tonight against the New York Jets. Thanks for being here, and now...
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
The After Party Live with Kim going on. So that's...
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Over on the After Party Live channel. Thanks, everybody. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.